This time I have senior news editor at Insider. She manages stories and reporters who cover a diverse range of beats, including politics, communities of color, and much else. Ms. Katie Tubman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so it has been wild with COVID, especially with these new variants coming out, Delta variant, and also with a lot of lawmakers not necessarily looking to enforce mask mandates, particularly Governor Greg Abbott saying that he's not going to impose another statewide mask mandate. How is this impacting people?
Yeah, incredibly so, considering that the state is seeing a sharp rise in cases and hospitalizations amid the Delta variant being ravaging through the states. People are not handling this well. There is a struggle right now that we're seeing not only in states like Texas, but other red states where there's a pushback against mandates, against restrictions. And right now it seems like there's either the people or the politics at stake here. And so in Texas, we see Greg Abbott, it's so reminiscent of 2020. Around March, we saw the lockdowns happening and then the pushback from Trump and other Republicans saying that reopening should be happening. And we saw Greg Abbott take that route of being one of the people who pushed against staying open, shut down most of the state. But then as the economy took a nosedive, a lot of the conversation started changing. And we saw that reopening phases were starting. And then around the same time this year, just last year in July, Texas had seen a sharp rise, almost a major outbreak is what they called it at the time, of COVID cases. And that pushed the governor to actually about face and go back to restrictions such as easing them or going back a phase or two to make sure that people were safe. Now, this did not end well, of course. We saw that a lot of conservatives, even a handful of local Republican lawmakers had pushed back and even entered lawsuits against the governor for these restrictions. And so we can expect that there's a lesson to be learned on so many fronts, but that we can expect that the governor himself might be a little bit hesitant to repeat last year, whereas we could see some sort of restrictions, some sort of lockdown, some sort of mandate. But at the same time, there will be a fierce backlash amongst his party, especially as we saw last year, that happened around this time. And so that is what we're seeing. People are kind of in the throes of what will happen if the Delta variant gets any much worse than it is right now.
Yes, and it seems to be very much the problem in a lot of places. It's my understanding recently that there was a report that came out that essentially around the area of Disney World, they're experiencing a spike in COVID cases. And a lot of these places that have opened up and that are exposing people, do you think that there's gonna possibly be a happy medium where some places will be able to stay open and others won't necessarily, or that we're going to go back almost into that nationwide quarantine that impacted a lot of the nation?
All right, it'll be really tough to see a nationwide quarantine happen again, especially with the pushback against so many states that are Republican and GOP led. I will say that I was at Disneyland and Disney World not so long ago, about a week or two, and it was really, really hard to keep a mask on, to keep your distance, because everyone is so excited to get out there and be outside of their homes. At the same time, we're seeing pushback from DeSantis to say that there will be no mask mandate, there will be no more restrictions, and there are many, many people who put him in a high approval ratings that say that he is looking out for the health of Floridians and that he's also looking out for the health of the state economy. And so we probably will not see any type of large scale quarantine happen. It will depend on sadly, how far worse can this Delta variant ravage states like Florida and like Texas.
All right, so clearly people prefer to play politics over just basic science. But in terms of the possibility, worst case scenario, in terms of getting people to act, do you think that we'd have to suffer at basically having other countries lock us out permanently before we really get the message that we have to do what we need to do?
Well, other countries are looking at the US. How's it that a variant that had taken off in another country like India is now seeing that the US is beating out that spread, and we are having far more cases, far more faster transmission rates. I think other countries are paying attention and seeing how the US is handling it. Who knows if it comes to the point where the US will have to be blocked out before it sits down and hunkers down and figures out what to do about getting everyone on board, especially around vaccinations. That's also reminiscent inside of Florida right now. We're hearing from DeSantis, the Republican governor there, saying vaccines help, vaccines save lives. At the same time, pushing against any mask wearing, any social restrictions that might be coming as recommendations from public health officials, from experts, from other politicians who worry about the safety of the population. So we're seeing that struggle constantly happening, especially in these GOP-led states where that's where the spikes were taking place. And that's where the constant struggle is being seen between, well, what will it take for us to really shut down? And will it take pushing forward with vaccines? Or will it take seeing another nosedive in our economy to get there? Because right now, the US economy is rebounding and there's faith in that. And there are a lot of people pushing for that. And so if there are any lockdown conversations on the table, they might be being pushed to the side.
Yeah, definitely. As a capitalistic culture that we seem to readily enjoy in our nation, it definitely seems like capitalism is king over the lives and the livelihood of others. So we're going to see how that works. And as you're watching and covering a lot of the issues that are kind of collateral or almost tangential to COVID-19, what do you think is being missed the most that a lot of people aren't necessarily seeing, but it's clearly an offshoot of this pandemic?
Right now, what's being missed is the tracking and the data. The data isn't supporting a lot of the claims that are either being used by Democrats and Republicans to make either case for staying open, for boosting vaccinations, for any of the sides. The data isn't there. We don't know exactly how many people are in the crossover of either they have natural immunity, which has been touted by Republican governors, to how many of them are actually vaccinated. We don't know what a threshold is for herd immunity, even though states like Texas are saying that we are almost there or we're so close. There is no data supporting that. That is where we're going to start falling off. There was so much tracking in 2020, and a lot of it wasn't even done by local government or state governments. A lot of it was done by smaller organizations and groups and scientists and doctors and experts. Now that we've seen reopenings happening at the start of the year, a lot of restrictions ease up, a lot of that data has been lagging behind. And if we don't know, if we don't catch up to what's truly happening, what's the full picture of what it looks like to have a COVID variant ravage communities throughout the country, if we don't have that true picture, we can't actually act effectively going forward. And we can only expect that it's going to get worse before we fully know what it looks like out there on a people level. And so that is what we're missing. And I think that's what people are turning towards. What is the information saying? What is the data saying? Whether you support it as a Democrat or Republican or someone on the left or the right or who's anti-vax or not, we don't have enough information right now. And it seems like we're falling behind.
Yes, it definitely seems that in addition to having a capitalistic culture, we do seem to like to perpetuate ignorance, keeping people in the dark because they're easier to control. So that seems to be something that we are seeing with these numbers being fudged or not necessarily being whole and true. And so as we move forward into potentially 2022, what do you think is the potential most shocking thing that we could possibly see?
The most shocking would get to the same rates of death of cases that we saw in 2020. We are seeing records being set right now in certain states that we've already spoken about. But to even get back to that number, to get as high as we were as last year, to see those kinds of hospitalization rates, to see hospitals struggling, to see nursing homes struggling, to see young people struggling too at the same time who aren't actually able to get vaccines, and younger people are getting COVID. To even get back to that place that we were last year would be heartbreaking almost to go into 2022 and beyond that. But right now, even looking at 2021, it doesn't seem so hopeful for folks. And that's why I said the information, having the data out there is going to help. And it's not going to be along party lines. It's just going to be about people and whether they're going to be in a healthy state come fall and then come next year.
Yes, and I would imagine having these kind of midterm elections will also be problematic in terms of people not necessarily wanting to acknowledge the problems that are ongoing.
Absolutely.
Yep, and that could be very, very detrimental. So we only have about a few minutes left. Is there anything you want to tout or to promote in any way that you'd like our viewers to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I would say definitely keep an eye out for we're doing a great job at Insider of tracking COVID cases and reporting them as much as possible, as fast as possible. I would say keep an eye out for anyone and anywhere, whatever dashboard you use. I would say look at them. Ask your states, ask your local government, where can you get accurate information, because that's what we're going to be needing going forward. And that's what everyday people are going to need to make the best decision for themselves. Because a lot of these states are saying that it's going to be on the individual, it's going to be personal responsibility, but you can't really fault people for taking full responsibility for their actions if they are not informed. And so I say that keep an eye out for the information wherever it is that it's coming from, but always ask the question, who is it serving in certain perspectives? Who is it helping? Who is it hurting? As you look for that kind of data.
Absolutely, that analytical framework, we need that from people. And can you please tell the viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on insider.com, Insider News, on Twitter. We're there. We're constantly sharing this information. You can also find me at Katia Tubman on Twitter as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions from our readers, your viewers who might even actually be thinking about, what will 2021, the rest of 2021 look like? Where should I go for information? How can I make the best choices for myself and my community?
Awesome, thank you so much for joining us. Katia Tubman, Senior News Editor at Insider. Thanks for joining us, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.